So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session. It's a fifth session under the OSPHERE ART initiative, which is designed exclusively for you to enhance the knowledge and expertise in reproductive medicine. Myself, Mayura Karkhanis, and I will be your host for today's session. Before we begin, I would like to thank our speaker, Dr. Samida Dalvi, for joining us today to share her expertise. She is an IVF, she is an infertility specialist and founder and owner of Pune IVF, and having 18 years of overall experience and 8 years of experience in assisted reproductive technology. To ensure you get the most of this session, we encourage you to participate actively, ask questions, share your thoughts, and engage with our speaker using the chat box. Also, we will be having some time for Q&A session, which will be moderated by Dr. Dilip Walke sir. So let's dive in. Dr. Samida will kick off our discussion on endometrial receptivity. So over to you, Dr. Samida.
Thank you so much, Mayura Karkanis, for this kind introduction. And I would like to thank OSPHERE at the outset for giving me this opportunity to interact with you all. So, I'm Dr. Samida Darvi, and I bring you greetings from my center in Pune. So, the topic that has been given to me is endometrial receptivity. So, what is endometrial receptivity? According to the article published in Fertility Sterility in 2019, how it defines is like the period of endometrial maturation during which the trophectoderm of the blastocyst can attach to the endometrial epithelial cells and subsequently proceed to invade the endometrial stroma and vasculature. So, what does that mean? Whatever we define regarding the endometrial implantation, we talk in terms of blastocyst. So how the blastocyst is formed, whether in a natural cycle or in an IVF cycle, when the oocyte gets fertilized with sperms, the first stage is the zygote. Later on, it gets converted into two-cell stage. At around third to fourth day, the 8-cell stage embryo is formed. At around fourth day, the 16th cell morula is formed, and the blastocyst usually forms at the end of 1/20th hours, which has a defined structure. If you can see in the right side of picture, it has a defined trophectoderm, inner cell mass, and a blastocele, that is the cavity. So when we talk about implantation, the external layer of the blastocyst, that is the trophectoderm, it has to invade the epithelium, and then it has to go ahead deeper and it has to get implanted. So in a simpler word, endometrium is unique in its ability to block the embryos from implanting except during that narrow window of receptivity. So the ability of endometrium to allow only the normal implantation is termed as receptivity. This transient period is called as window of implantation, and it is when the endometrium is receptive. It is most conducive to the blastocyst implantation. This is called as window of implantation. So talking about window of implantation in a natural cycle, it typically occurs between cycle day 20 to 24th of a normal 28 days menstrual cycle. It has been seen that the window of implantation opens 5 days after endogenous or exogenous progesterone action, and it closes in around 2 days after that. So this is just a repetition. What is implantation? It's a process whereby the embryo attaches itself to the surface of endometrium, followed by its migration into the deeper layers, followed by its invasion, and then gets embedded into the deeper layer of endometrium. The prerequisites are, of course, a functionally normal blastocyst, a receptive endometrium, and a good crosstalk between the endometrium and the embryo. Factors that influence the endometrial receptivity. So there are a lot of factors which keep on working at the receptive level, at the endometrium level, at the microscopic level. Some of them are cytokines, certain growth factors play a major role. There are certain genes working at the receptive level and certain proteins which together cause this endometrial receptivity. So, talking about it macroscopically, that is the features that we see on sonography. What all factors can cause disruption of endometrial receptivity? Anatomical factors like congenital uterine anomalies, at times they could be myomas, the fibroids that pinch inside the endometrial cavity are specifically those which cause a disruption into the endometrial cavity. There could be polyps. Adenomyosis is something that has been, shown to alter the receptivity of the endometrium. Intrauterine adhesions. Any previous surgery on the uterus, be it a simple DNC surgery, it has also shown to give rise to adhesions, and therefore this particular incidence does cause alteration in the endometrial receptivity. Thin endometrium has shown to change the receptivity of the endometrium. There could be certain immunological causes. There could be altered endometrial microbiota, endometriosis, PCOS, hydrosalpinx, fluid in endometrial cavity, and so on. So it has been seen that almost 2/3 of the implantation failures happen because of suboptimal endometrial receptivity. And the factors affecting receptivity are the ones that we have just discussed. So there are various markers of endometrial receptivity. People have studied histological markers, but histological markers couldn't get really famous because there was a lot of inter and intracycle variations into it. There have been biochemical evaluation, but even that could not fetch the attention of many. Then people thought of studying the pinopods of the endometrium, the ultrastructure of the pinopods. But again, that had a lot of, subjectivity in studying and reporting it. Later on, people started diverting their attention towards ultrasound scoring system. So ultrasound scoring system in which they study, we study not just the endometrial thickness, we also see the appearance of the endometrium. We also comment upon the blood vessels coming to it, the color flow Doppler studies, and obviously any other anatomical factor impinging into the uterus. The topic given to me today is endometrial receptivity. So I'll majorly try to stick to endometrial receptivity era. Maybe ultrasound scoring systems also we would have to cover it out later on. So any study, any test, I particularly feel that we should be knowing who has invented the test so that we know what was the idea behind inventing the particular test. So ERA was developed and patented by Genomics in 2009. It was designed to evaluate the endometrial receptivity after extensive research, and it's the first diagnostic test that determines the woman's unique personalized embryo transfer timing. So what ERA does? Basically, it's a customized array comparing the transcriptomic profile of the test sample with those of the control samples from 7 days after LH hormone peak in a natural cycle and after progesterone administration in HRT cycle. So what does transcriptomic profile means? So transcriptomic profile is nothing but a set of RNA molecules expressed under certain specific conditions, you can say. So what these people have done is they have taken some control subjects. Control subjects were the fertile subjects. In the control group, they have again divided it into natural cycle and the HRT cycle. And they have created a transcriptomic profile of all these patients under these specific conditions, that is in the natural cycle as well as in the HRT cycle. So right from the day of LH peak, in fertile women, they have studied the transcriptomic profile and they have computed it. So this particular test contains 248 genes which are coupled to a computational predictor that can diagnose the personalized endometrial window of implantation of that given patient regardless of the endometrial histology. So rationale of using ERA, the endometrial factor plays a key role in implantation and there's no debate about it. And the ERA determines that when the endometrium is really receptive. Recurrent implantation failure patients may have displaced window of implantation and this can lead to a non-receptive endometrium and this can end up retransferring the embryos into a non-receptive endometrium. The endometrial gene expression is a signature that allows evaluation of endometrial receptivity and therefore it identifies personalized window of implantation. That is the window of implantation made for that particular woman. What's the rationale of using ERA? Research says that it has demonstrated synchronization between implantation-ready embryo and the receptive endometrium. And if there is this synchronization, it would increase the chances of success in ART. So how this ERA test is done? ERA requires a quick and easy endometrial biopsy. This biopsy can be taken even in your OPD. So the endometrial biopsy is taken with the help of people. And post this, the sample is sent for RNA extraction. After RNA extraction, NGS analysis is done and it is compared with the transcriptomic profile that they already have. And then the report is released. The report usually that comes, it tells us whether the endometrial sample that has been sent for the biopsy is receptive or it is not. So if it is receptive, we would have to time our embryo transfer according to the report. So it utilizes next generation sequencing technology to analyze the expression of 248 genes related to the endometrial receptivity status. After sequencing from endometrial biopsy, it is possible to evaluate whether the endometrium is receptive or it is not. In about 10% of cases, it is also important to perform a second endometrial biopsy if the first biopsy turns out to be negative or the first biopsy turns out to be post-receptive or pre-receptive. So how it is exactly done? So I would focus more only on the HRT cycles because those cycles are more easy to mimic in the subsequent cycles. So ERA can be done in HRT cycle as well as in natural cycle. But as I've said, I would be focusing more on the HRT cycle. So in HRT cycle, the patient is given hormone replacement therapy. The patient is started with an estrogen supplement and we document it very properly. We document how much estrogen has been given. We also document the brand of the estrogen that has been given, whether it was given orally, whether it was given vaginally, or it was given in the form of gel. And we document, we call the patient again on the 10th day of a cycle to check her on the vaginal ultrasound. We check whether her endometrium that has been formed is of good triple layer appearance. So whatever endometrium is formed, we document it. If we are not happy with the thickness of the endometrium, we can call the patient back again. We can increase the dose of estrogen. We can call the patient back again. And the day we are happy with her endometrium, we send her serum progesterone level, which we expect to be less than 1 mg per ml. So once we are happy with her endometrium and we are happy with the progesterone levels, we start administering the exogenous progesterone to her. So whatever progesterone we administer her, it could be vaginal, oral, or in the form of injection, we have to document it. Why this documentation is important? Because we have to mimic this cycle as it is in the subsequent cycle according to the report of the receptivity array. And we take the biopsy sample at 1/20th hours, that is after supplementation of progesterone for 5 days. So this was the first picture shows that after giving the estrogen supplement, we supplement the patient with progesterone, and on 5th day of progesterone supplementation, we take the sample. If that sample turns out to be receptive, we mimic the same cycle and transfer the embryos on 5th day of the progesterone supplementation. If the report comes to be post-receptive, we have to perform second set of ERA cycle on that same patient, but this time we would not take the biopsy on 5th day, but we would take the biopsy on 3rd or 4th day, depending upon the report. So this is just for us to know that this test is also performed in natural cycle, or it is also performed in modified natural cycle. So how we do it in modified natural cycle is we just give an injection HCG to induce the ovulation. So we call the patient in a natural cycle and we check, we do her follicular study, we document the size of her follicle, and later on we also document the endometrium going in sync with the follicular study. Once we find out that the LH is positive by LH kit or by doing the serum LH levels, we send also the progesterone levels, and those levels again have to be less than 1, and followed by that we would be taking the biopsy sample after 7th day. So basically this is again a diagrammatic representation of what I have said. Once the follicular growth has been monitored and once the HCG has been administered in the natural cycle or in the modified natural cycle, the first sample for the receptivity array is taken on HCG plus 7th day. And according to the report, the embryos are transferred on the same day. So how do we interpret this report? The report can come as receptive, that is, the gene expression profile is absolutely in concordance with the receptive endometrium. That means it is recommended to perform a blastocyst transfer using exactly the same protocol and timings utilized during the ERA test. It could also come as late receptive, that is, the sample that you have sent for biopsy, the gene expression of it is concordant with the endometrium at the end of the receptive stage. So that means the sample that we have sent, and if you have done embryo transfer in the previous cycle, on that same day, you have transferred the embryos in the late receptive stage. The report can come as pre-receptive, that is, the gene expression that is concordant with endometrium at a pre-receptive stage. This could be either due to displacement of the window of implantation, and it does occur in around 5% of the cases, and at times a repeat ERA test is required in this kind of patient. Similarly, post-receptive means that the sample that you have given for biopsy says that the endometrium is post-receptive, and in subsequent cycle, you should not transfer the embryos after 5 days of progesterone, but maybe a day less, that is after 4 days of progesterone. So this is how the ERA report looks like. In case, they also give you the recommendations that the ERA report indicates. So in this particular report, they have said that the ERA report will indicate the optimum time to perform personalized embryo transfer, or if it is post-receptive, as you can see in this report, we will have to perform another endometrial biopsy sampling. It can also come as pre-receptive, or the receptive is the one wherein we can transfer the embryos exactly how we have done it in the previous cycle. So reproducibility of the report. It is proven to be reproducible for at least 36 months. Endometrial preparation protocol must be exactly replicated. This is very important. Like for example, in the ERA cycle, if we have had the endometrium thickness, which was around 7 to 12 millimeter, in the subsequent cycle, you cannot start progesterone when the thickness is more than 12 millimeter. So this is very important to replicate the cycle in a similar way. Secondly, if there has been a lot of change in BMI, this can shift the window of implantation. Intervention of any kind, like let's say if the patient has any polyp or anything else for which you have intervened, for which you have done hysteroscopy or polypectomy, it will again shift the window of implantation. The endogenous progesterone properly controlled in biopsy and transfer cycles should be less than 1. That is, there should be no endogenous progesterone before you starting the external or exogenous progesterone. Indications of this test as given by the inventors is ERA is indicated, what they say is, in recurrent implantation failure cycles. What the investors predict is that in around 20% of cases, there is a shift in implantation window. The window of implantation is displaced, and therefore these are the patients in which ERA has to be performed, and it should not be performed on routine patients. Patients with more than 30 BMI has, a prediction that their window of implantation does change. Then patients with endometrial atrophy, patients with adenomyosis, and recurrent biochemical pregnancies too. So these are the specific indications given by the investors or the inventors of the test. Limitations of the test: many times it gives us a non-informative report, and thus the repeat test would add to the cost of the therapy. It does not provide information about other pathologies in the endometrium and whether the window of implantation was displaced because of that. It does not guarantee a pregnancy. So even if you transfer it in the personalized window of implantation given by the ERA, it would not guarantee that obviously the implantation would happen. It comes with a cost, definitely, and it's time consuming. More importantly is, what I find is, in case the receptivity array comes as P+3 positive, one has to transfer day 3 embryos, and in case you have frozen all day 5 embryos in your laboratory, then yes, you would not be able to apply this test on your patients. So what the recent studies say about it? This was a study published in February 2023, endometrial receptivity array before frozen embryo transfer cycles, which was a systematic review and meta-analysis. It simply said that the ERA did not reveal a significant change in the rate of pregnancy after IVF cycles, and it is not clear whether it increases the pregnancy rate or not. But in this cycle, in this particular study, they haven't studied the ploidy status of the embryo. Then came a study which had studied the ploidy status of the embryos, that is the genetically normal embryos transferred in the ERA settings. This was a review in which they have studied 11 studies which included more than 7,500 patients, and out of them, more than 1,500 patients were evaluated by ERA. Even this study said that it could not optimize the reproductive outcomes in general infertile patients. I repeat, general infertile patients as well as in RIF patients. So these were the 11 studies that they have, included in the study. And if we go into depth of these studies, we can really figure it out that wherein the indications, the inclusion criteria considered by all of the studies were quite different. So in certain studies out of this, they have considered just the general infertile population. And in some studies, they have considered failure of more euploid embryos. So in the studies wherein they have considered the indications given by the investors, that is the RIF patients, and they have done the ERA test on genetically normal embryos, it has shown a certain improvement in the implantation rate. Similarly, when the study was done, the same thing has been proven in another studies as well, wherein they have considered only the recurrent implantation failures out of the studies, and they have performed ERA test in genetically normal embryos. There has been an improvement in the implantation rate. Then something called as ethnicity. See, we all know that ethnicity does matter a lot in fertility practice. So all the studies that have been published, majority of the studies are of Western origin. So this was one study that was published in fertility sterility, which was an eye-opener for many of us. It simply said that ethnicity as a determinant of ovarian reserve, and there is a lot of difference in the ovarian aging between Spanish and Indian women. So let's say whatever ovarian reserve I have at the age of 30 is similar to the ovarian reserve of a 36-year-old Spanish woman. So if the egg reserve matters so much, obviously the receptivity would also change as per ethnicity, and therefore not all the Western studies would be applicable for the Indian setup. So in this, going back to the same study, going back to the same meta-analysis, if we compare only the Indian studies, there is clear-cut an indication of error. I would not say clear-cut indication, but in cases where receptivity error was performed, there was at least the improvement in implantation rate by 6 to 7%. This was again another Indian study published by Dr. Nalini Mahajan, who said that window of implantation is displaced in patients of adenomyosis, and she has proven that it's displaced in almost 47% of the adenomyosis patients. This was again another study, a review of endometrial receptivity array, which was published in 2023. And this review again summarized the recent clinical data for transfers with RIF using ERA. In the same study, it has mentioned that results from ERA testing were highly effective, enabling 58.8% of patients with severe RIF to achieve ongoing pregnancy. The Indian studies, so I would not like to mention all the studies, but wherever lot of Indian studies have proven that when properly selected patients, if we apply the test, there has been certain improvement in the pregnancy rate, clinical pregnancy rate, implantation rate, etc. Are the guidelines in favor of this test? Currently, the Canadian Fertility or none of the ASHRAE guidelines do support this test. But yes, if we talk about it, if we understand what the test was made for, probably it can help in certain set of patients. So in summary, the window of implantation is constant, definitely amongst most of the women, but it is displaced in those 20% women for whom the ERA test can be of a good tool to identify their personalized window of implantation. There has not been any randomized control trial investigating the rule of it, investigating the use of it, and we need more studies to investigate it for the RIF and adenomyosis patients. It's indisputable that RCTs show when the ERA is applied in unspecified populations, obviously there is no significant difference in implantation rates. Therefore, ERA is not advantageous to general population, but it is advantageous to specific population of recurrent implantation failures, maybe adenomyosis, and again other studies. So while the hard data may inform the intellect, it's largely the soft data that generates wisdom. So that was all about the endometrial receptivity array. I know it has, it's a bit advanced topic and we are yet to cover a lot of simpler topics. Maybe we will be able to discuss more about this topic after certain other topics that would be covered in upcoming series. In case there's any other question, I'm there to answer.
Yes, Amita, wonderful presentation. And yeah, you were right in saying that this may be a little advanced.
Yes.
Everybody comes to know about this. I just wanted to ask, basically, you will have to send this sample to a genetic lab. Whenever you're doing it. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Samit, will have to send this sample to a genetic lab, isn't it? Where is it done? Samida, are you there? Hello,
Sir, I think she's
समीदाचा हे बंद झालाय. I think she's logging in from. हा, Samida is
yeah,
back
yeah,
now.
she is here. She is here.
याच्यामधून log in झाली. आवाज येत नाही, आवाज.
Unmute yourself, Dr.
केलेलं आहे मयूर.
ओके समीदा.
Yeah.
आणि माझ्याही मनात तो प्रश्न होता, where is the sample set? Essentially, you need to have a genetic lab somewhere in the area you are practicing. Yeah, as you
Yes,
said,
yes.
हा, तर कुठे पाठवते आणि काय कॉस्ट आहे?
So basically, there are certain genetic labs that are coming up with the ERA sampling test and the genetic analysis by NGS. And currently, it is being offered by Igenomics. The Igenomics people come and collect the sample from you, and they take the sample and then they give the report in around 15 days. Anderson is also coming up with the same thing. Lilac Insights also have the same test. But yes, the reports are more or less comparable. But Igenomics was the first one to do it. So I personally trust that company more.
नाही, when you send the sample, how quickly does the result come? Because if you are going
15
to use,
days, sir. 15 days.
so essentially you are determining the window of implantation to be used for the next
Yes,
cycle.
sir. Yes, sir. The same cycle we cannot apply it. I mean, the results, the whole the funda behind doing all this is the same thing, that these are not the patients in whom we are going to transfer the embryos for the first time. We are not identifying the personalized window of implantation for the ones who are undergoing embryo transfer for the first time. Supposing I have had a patient in whom I have transferred very good quality embryos in the past, maybe 2 or 3 times. Okay, I
But it
can
is
see
not.
that yes, if I have, it is applicable only for those 20% of patients who face RIF. And we are not able to understand that the endometrium looks good, the blood flow looks good, the embryos look good. At times they are proven to be euploid, still they are not getting implanted. So it could be in those number of patients in which the test could be this thing applied.
Aparna is asking you because now you're going to take endometrial biopsy, and of course you're going to transfer the next month or maybe after 2 or 3 months. Does it affect? I mean, does it have any effect on the
No, sir.
endometrium?
It is just taken with the people, which does not affect really. So, upon the surface, when we just do it, we don't even do it under anesthesia. It's an OPD procedure. So, with the
And
people, we just take a small sample and we send it. Patient
the,
does not even have spotting lost lot of times.
the cost, somebody is even asking the cost. I don't know who asked, but then
It varies. Yeah, cost is, it varies from lab to lab, but it could be somewhere around 40,000 to 50,000 currently. So for one cycle. So some labs give you the cost of 2 samples in the same setting. Supposing if the patient has had lot of transfer failures and I feel like doing 2 or 3 samples in the same cycle, what I can do is I can give progesterone, take a sample on fourth day of progesterone once, and again call her again on the next day, take a sample on fifth day, call her again on next day and take a sample on sixth day. So in the same setting, 3 samples go that way.
okay, you're right. So anything? I mean, this may being a very new
Yeah,
topic.
it is. We have to probably we'll have to repeat it again when once we are done with the basic
And
protocols of ultrasound.
what is your patients now? So all those 20% of patients who had repeated implantation failures and you use this, how many of them became pregnant? I mean, is it that really exciting? Has that helped you in your practice?
So I would not say all those 20% of the patients have helped, it has helped, but yes, definitely in certain patient, in like if I happen to compare 10 RIF patients, and out of them, not all the patients would get convinced for the test again. That is one thing. Yes. Yes. And even out of them, if I do 5 tests, maybe in 2 2 or 3 patients, this thing might come as, post receptive or pre receptive. So of late I've done one transfer in a patient in whom we have formed 6 embryos. So first 2 set of embryos had gone, she did not conceive. So third time when I have performed this test, basically I was left with the option of either embryo biopsy and ERA in both. And the patient was like, whatever you want to do it in this cycle only. So report of embryo biopsy was that the embryos turned out to be euploid. But when I have performed the receptivity array, it turned out to be, on P+5, after 5 days of giving progesterone, it turned out to be post-receptive. So I just performed transfer 1 day prior, and currently that patient is pregnant. So that was the only change I made in that patient, and it was successful. But the results are not to be, boasted too much, because it's very certain fraction of patients in whom it is useful. So my patient fortunately was affording, my patient fortunately was trusting, she already had embryos, so it was like it helped her. So that is how it is.
Right. I think Kundan is also with us. If Kundan is there, can he share his experience on that? Or is he there? He has left.
Yes, it is left.
So thank you very much, Sumita, for opening the doors to something new, and I think that will get many delegates to go use it for their own respective practices. Are there any more questions from the audience? Because my internet is little unstable. I don't know. Sometimes
I have one question, sir. Dr.
Yeah.
Ranjana Shinde.
Yes.
I
Ma'am,
cannot can't see the chat actually. I don't know why.
I'm just. Hello, Samida ma'am.
Hi, Ranjana. Good to see you.
Hi.
How are you? Yeah.
Fine, fine. It was I just heard the last 10 minutes because I just forgot to log in only. Then I realized. So, so now the question, I don't know, you must have covered it also in your talk.
Okay. Yeah.
Me at times we see good endometrium, good morphology. In fact, I do most of the times endometrial Doppler also for my patients.
Yes.
We have
Yes.
more patients, so we can afford to do it. But then everything is good. The endometrium is good at every this thing. While we are building up the endometrium, everything goes on perfectly. The craft is going nicely. The embryos are also good. The patient does not conceive. So So how much do we trust our Doppler studies? Sometimes we have done our Dopplers, and I have many a times cancelled the patient because the Doppler says absent flow in one uterine artery, or it says that the endometrial, the Applebaum scoring, the blood flow is not even in zone 2. So then we cancel. But then if I have prepared the endometrium through letrozole and all, so I've seen that patient coming back again in the same cycle. I just tell her, okay, you will not transfer, but you just TICV advice, and then the patient comes back. So how much should we trust? Many of the clinicians, they say if the morphology is good and the Dopplers are not good, you just go ahead. Many of them do not do Dopplers also.
So
whether we should
yes.
practice. Yeah.
See, ultrasound scoring is something different. What I'm talking by endometrial receptivity array is at a very microscopic level. Okay.
Correct.
What I was talking about was the transcriptomic profile. So all the patients, see, if probably you must have missed, how we perform the receptivity array cycle is we give estrogen to the patient. No, estrogen to the patient, form the endometrial thickness. Once we have formed the thickness, then we start the progesterone supplementation to the patient, and then we take the sample after 5th day of giving the progesterone, exactly on the day when we were supposed to perform the embryo transfer.
Correct.
Right? And in this 20% of patients, we find that there is a displacement of the window of implantation. So it could be at the microcellular level, it could be at the transcriptomic level as well. But yes, one thing we should not forget, that most of the good looking embryos, even the 30% of good looking embryos are aneuploid. So if
Yeah.
the patient has money only to perform one test, I would rather prefer to check for the euploidous status of the embryos rather than performing the ERA cycle.
Yeah.
So that is how
Yeah.
it is. So a lot depends even upon the patient's pocket, because we can't just tell them, because see, in India the IVF treatments are not insured, right? Unlike in Spain. So in Spain we used to tell the patient we would be doing genetic biopsy for you, then we'll put you on ERA, and then we will do this, and patient would be happy. The patient would have no objection on it. But over here we can't do all those things. So if you're fortunate to have the repeated implantation failures in in kind of patient who's affording, then you can do all these things for you. But if not, then probably we should be doing first checking the euploidy status of the embryos, and if still it
And
does
then
not
ERA.
succeed, then the role of ERA comes.
Okay, okay. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Samidha, for sharing your valuable knowledge and
you.
your best practices. And thank you, Dr. Dilip Valkesar, for this moderating question and answers session as well. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out and joining or being here for this session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manvira madam. Thank you so much.
Until next Wednesday, bye bye to all of you.
Yeah,
So
sure, sir.
it is
Bye.
really